Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host tonight. I am the Assistant Director of NAMI North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. I'm glad you're here with us on this rainy Thursday. At least that's what it's doing in the Triangle area. Thursdays with NAMI is our way of building conversations and building community around the topic of mental health. Yesterday was World Bipolar Day. In honor of that occasion, we'll be talking with someone who lives with the condition and uses her insight to help others. Rosalie Tierno describes herself as fifth-generation bipolar. She grew up watching her mother struggle, and when her own mental health became a challenge, her mother understood. Rosalie also manages thoughts of suicide and post-traumatic stress disorder. Today, she is a well-spoken and knowledgeable advocate. She will graduate from North Carolina State University with a bachelor's in social work in May. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our guest. That will be followed partway through by a video of the week. And then we'll spend time taking questions from you, members of our virtual studio audience on Zoom and Facebook. Now, as usual, we're going to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. Thursdays with NAMI is funded in part by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Use Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Block Grant Fund. I'm working on my high-speed radio voice for that part. I thought that was a pretty good one. All righty, without any further ado, Rosalie is the social work intern for NAMI Wake County, where she works to normalize mental health and decrease the stigma surrounding mental health challenges and suicide in particular. She's also developing a support group. This is way too cool for suicide attempt survivors. Welcome, Rosalie.
Hi, I'm Rosalie. Stole my thunder with being a social work major. Less than 40 days at this point. My target population is adolescent mental health and substance use, and the co-occurring disorders. And the reason for this is also my motto, which is be who you needed when you were younger. So my mental health started when I was 14, but before that, I'd seen my grandparents, my mom, my brother suffer daily, and everyone around us, because it's not just you. And mental health was always big. And as I got older, it became a defining factor. So depression, eating disorder, anxiety, PTSD, and then at 18, bipolar disorder. And the last 3 years, I have been processing bipolar, getting the meds, therapy, fixing my environment, getting my routine. Not great for a college student, not going well. And a lot of checks and balances. And I am stable, but there are definitely bad days.
Right. So be the person you needed when you were younger. I love that. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So you describe yourself as fifth generation bipolar, as I mentioned. Tell us about when mental health became a challenge for you.
So bipolar can be traced genetically and in through generations. However, it typically skips. So being 5 in a row is quite rare. And in my family, I had always seen it in my mom at least. She was unmedicated for a majority of my life. And as much as she is an amazing mother, unmedicated bipolar disorder is not fun. And I never knew what I would come home to. It was unpredictable. There were months that she didn't leave the house, she didn't leave the couch. She didn't sleep some months. There was fun mom and there was scary mom. I had a brother that suffered with an addiction, and it was always hard on him, but also for all of us to cope with. And I just wanted to look up to my big brother, but not always the best role model.
Mm.
And for me, with having all of this around, at around age 11, I kind of started to develop a sense of depression. Not, I wouldn't be diagnosed, but it was starting. That's also when I started to self-harm. But things weren't serious enough until I was about 14. And that's when I hit my major depression and suicidal ideations. I was angry. I stopped eating. I wouldn't leave my room. I looked like a normal teenager. But having a mom with the history she does, she knew that's not what it was. So she took it very seriously.
Mm. That's an interesting point, because so many parents don't know what to do. You hesitate because certain behaviors are really normal for a person in their teens. A lot of sleeping, mood changes, that can be the changing hormones of somebody growing up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thankfully she had her own experience and maybe some mother's intuition, so that she did know what to do.
Very lucky.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you experienced inpatient care pretty young. I think it was 14 years old. How did that go?
So that is when I experienced suicidal ideations, and I told a friend, and he knew enough to tell an adult, as one should. I was not a fan of his actions. I am now. But going to a school, they had to tell my mom, and I wasn't allowed back in school until medically cleared. So we went to the hospital that night, and I was admitted at 4 a.m. almost 7 years ago to the day. I think like 2 days ago.
Wow.
It was traumatizing. It was strange, but it was rewarding. Intake was awful. They made me sit in the hallway for hours. Didn't listen, nothing, just had to sit there. And then they made me go in an ambulance to a different hospital. And then they did a complete strip and marked every like flaw on the body, so that if you do anything, they can say like it was or wasn't there before. Not great as a 14-year-old.
They marked it, what, with a Sharpie or something?
They had to write it on like a chart.
Okay, okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Very humiliating for your first night at like 4 a.m. And since I was a minor, I was also on a floor with all minors. However, this meant 6 to 17. We had males, females, and I had roommates I shouldn't have had. I didn't have like one of the younger boys, but it was not great.
Oh my.
But it was very important to my recovery, and I recommend inpatient to anyone at least once. They got me medication, they got me a therapist, and I started outpatient. They helped me talk to my parents, which a lot of times is hard, or they don't listen. We did different types of therapy. I don't know how common that is, but we did art therapy, we did music therapy, and one-on-one groups. So I got to kind of see what I liked or didn't. It was also just 5 days I didn't have to go to school.
Mm. Was school problematic? Was there bullying or?
I mean, it was stressful, definitely. I'm a very school-oriented person, so everything had to be perfect.
Ah,
So that was the one thing I put all of my energy into,
mm.
and then I'd go home and do all of my sleep.
You'd go home and what? I'm sorry.
Sleep. Just
Ah,
sleep the entire time I was home.
I see. So you had a break from maybe your own perfectionism and that pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they gave me structure. They made me not be a perfectionist.
gotcha.
We only had 2 hours of homework a day.
Oh, all right. I do hear from many people who have had inpatient service or hospitalization that when they go in, they're put in these difficult situations, put in a room with the door shut and nobody comes to talk to them for hours, or made to wait in a hallway, or made to wait in a waiting room. Um, I can't think of, it baffles me that we can't do better. I guess I'll say it that way.
Yeah, that's something that my mom advocated for me every step of the way. She pushed and pushed. She would annoy my doctors all the time and always made sure that I was getting what we were there for. That's
Mm,
why we went to, that's why I was put in the ambulance and went to a different hospital so I
mm,
could get better treatment, even if we couldn't afford it.
right. I'm so glad you had that. When you describe the therapies that you had, art, group, one-on-one, I've heard from many people that they did not get much at all when they were hospitalized, that they waited a day or two or more to see a psychiatrist, and until then all their meds were suspended. I just can't wrap my head around treating people so poorly when they're having a mental health crisis enough that they require inpatient care, and then they're essentially jerked around.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And
Yeah.
it needs a lot more advocacy, and I'd love to help with that. I have not been inpatient here. I was inpatient in New Jersey and
Mm,
also as an adolescent. So I don't know how different it would be as an adult.
mhm.
But
Well, the cases that I'm referring to are all adult cases, so
yeah,
it's it is a mixed bag. It's, there are certainly different types of experiences, but that's what I've heard in my connection groups and in various conversations I've had. I do talk about this stuff pretty often, more than the average bear working for NAMI. um, so when you were in your early days, what helped and what hurt with your recovery, especially from other people?
yeah. So my mom, obviously, knowing just what was happening meant a lot, but also she not she knew it, but she didn't say it. We had little like code things, we still do, where if things are starting to get bad, we eat Chinese food in bed or we go for a drive. And that's our symbol of things are getting there, but I just need some time. I may open up, I may not. Um, but it was her way of being there without having to push.
Mhm.
Um, I
I love
also
that.
got the complete opposite reaction on the other side of my family, where mental health is not exactly embraced. Um, they want to blame it on something. They
Mhm.
don't want it to be, they see it as a flaw. So they don't want it to be you. They want it to be a reason. they want it to be, in my case, they decided I must be gay. Don't see how that's relevant.
Yeah.
Still
That's
don't get that one. But ignorance goes a long way. But it was just a lot of ignorance and they didn't want to learn. And that hurt. It still does, because it hasn't changed. They don't believe in social work and they don't believe in what I do.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing. And there are a few messages in there, a few challenges that you're dealing with. One is complete ignorance and not trying to fix the ignorance. Is, you know, she lives with depression. Oh, is she gay? And then not supporting your profession, which is, you know, your passion is probably fueled by your experience, but it's a separate thing. And then just not getting you, it sounds like.
Yep.
So, well, I'm glad you do have that support that you have. It strikes me that you have sort of the extremes of support and the extreme lack of support.
I mean, bipolar disorder, I got the two sides.
That's true. There's a theme here. You're very consistent. What was your first manic episode like?
My first manic was a lot. I'm sure it didn't all start in one night, but I can pin it to one night and just say, wow, something happened. It was 3 years ago in January, and I went to a concert with my roommate. I made a lot of out of character decisions. I decided to get my septum pierced out of nowhere. While we were there,
and that's your nose, basically.
Yeah. I decided I didn't feel like dealing with my boyfriend, so I broke up with him through text while at the concert. He was my childhood sweetheart, which is what made it even worse. That night, I made several different dating profiles, and not even 24 hours after the breakup, I hooked up with someone random that I barely knew. Another 24 hours was another. Hypersexuality is one of my main symptoms, and just generally making poor choices. And I know it, but I don't care until it's too late. So around a week into my first manic episode, I don't say I put myself in it. That sounds a little victim blaming. But I went to someone's apartment and I was raped. And the PTSD that I had already had worsened dramatically. And it just all kept getting worse. My mom had already called me out a few times for being manic. Mentioned it. She noticed that I was going out. I smoked weed, stopped sleeping, I skipped class, but I didn't want to listen. It was fun. I was having a great time. Mania is fun. After depression for so many years, I was finally happy, fake happy, but happy, until I crashed. And that was no longer fun. So I decided, let's get medication. Let's get treatment.
That's a lot. That's a real rough introduction. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I know that you know this, but I'm just going to say it for the benefit of anyone else who's listening. That was not your fault at all. Yeah, I understand being young and restless and reckless. I was a big drinker when I was young and made a lot of impulsive decisions. So I relate to all of that. But none of that, the minute you say no, then that needs to be respected. And
Yeah.
I'm just sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, goodness. But you've rebuilt so much in a short period of time. I have to say, as you were talking, it occurred, and you said it was 3 years ago, and I was like, geez, that's really pretty recent. I mean, you seem like it's way behind you because you just have this calm, wise demeanor, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was lucky enough that I was diagnosed and treated after my first manic episode.
Mm,
I didn't have to go through months and months. It was pretty quick. And also I had grown up with it. So I kind of knew what to do. I didn't want to do it, but I knew that I should have a sleep schedule. I knew meds are extremely important. They are. For me, not for everyone. But once I found my balance, which was luckily very quick, I did DNA testing, so I didn't have to test a lot of meds. I found it on try number 2.
nice.
Yeah.
Wow. For people who might not realize, that's extraordinarily lucky. There are many people who have tried 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of medication and therapy, and it just takes a long time to get that cocktail that's helpful. In addition, many people don't get the mental health care that they need immediately. There's usually a gap of years, either because they don't know, they don't identify their behavior as needing that kind of care, or there's denial because of the stigma and discrimination that's out there. So a lot of things did go right for you, and I'm thrilled that happened, that went well.
For my mom, it took them 10 years before they gave her the correct diagnosis, and many years later for the correct medication.
And that's a typical story.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my own case, I waited a very long time to get help. I was okay with counseling because everyone does counseling, but I didn't want to take medication. I just felt like that would make me one of those people. That was a more serious level of mental illness. And I waited, oh my gosh, it was probably 7 years of unnecessary dark depression. And then when I finally started taking SSRIs, which is a kind of antidepressant, I realized that's what I needed. It was like light and day immediately. So yeah. All righty. Well, let's move right along. Some people enjoy mania because, as you mentioned, it's high energy. It can be fun. Of course, there are sometimes difficult consequences afterwards. What do you suggest for keeping that healthy balance? You kind of touched on it already.
Yeah. So I do love my mania. It's fun. I describe it as, if you don't have it, is drinking too much of an energy drink. Like you're wide awake, you're wired, but your heart starts to feel funny, like things start going wrong. And it gets scary. So for me, as much as I love it, I start to scare myself, and I know the permanent damage I've done to myself, to others, stories I can never outlive. Some are fun, some are not. It just started to lose the fun for me. And the depressions are worse than regular depression because you have the high and then you crash. It's no longer normal depression because you felt happy again. So for me, I got on a medication, and something I was very adamant about is I don't want to feel like a zombie. I don't want no emotion. So for me, I do have slight mood changes. I do go through little manias or little depressions, but they aren't swings, they aren't harmful. I know it's there and I can stop it. I may have 1 or 2 nights where I want to do something dumb or something I would have done when I was manic, but I have the self-awareness and self-control to say, let's not, or my depression will get there, but I have the strength again to get out of bed and to function. So for me, it was just the medication and just getting getting one where I did not feel like a zombie. I wanted emotion that wasn't scary, but also wasn't nothing. So something comfortable.
Right. And I see a question in the Q&A box that your comments just now kind of lead into. How do you deal with suicidal ideation thoughts?
For me, it depends. A lot of the time, I know that I won't act on it. I haven't hit that level of ideation in quite a bit, but I will grab my pocket knives and I will send it to my friends. Just so it's not there. It's not a reminder. I don't want it there. I will grab my meds that are normally out, put it away, just so it's not a reminder that things exist. Or I will go sit on my friend's bed and watch him play video games, or go watch a movie I don't care about. I don't have to care about what I'm doing. It's just I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that's like a comfort of at least one person cares enough to let me sit here.
That goes a long way, just not being alone. I understand that. Yeah. Well, thank you for those ideas. That makes perfect sense. So one of the things that keeps people from getting help, as we've mentioned, is that fear and the ignorance surrounding mental illness. What impact did stigma have on your life and your recovery?
I was not taught stigma. I just didn't have it. For me, mental illness was normal, and the non-mentally ill were they were lying. Like that was the exception. They got something, they just don't want to talk about it. That was just how I saw it, is everybody has something, whether they want to talk about it or not. So I wasn't scared to seek treatment. I wasn't scared to start my recovery. And while I do have family that's very opposed to it, I wouldn't be alive if I believed what they did. So it may have driven us apart, and they are ashamed of some of the things that I do. But the fact that they're they fear or don't like what I do says more about them than about me.
Mhm. Well, I love that you had that experience and that you can shrug that off. That seems very appropriate. And I hope that as we move forward and have more and more generations that do talk about mental health challenges, more treatments that work, more testing that can save time with medical experimentation, I hope more and more people have that kind of experience.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm. So you're a social work intern, as I mentioned, at NAMI Wake County, as I stole your thunder. One of your projects is developing a support group for suicide attempt survivors. How's that going?
It is going great. The process is going pretty quickly. So most support groups take years to develop. We're moving. We're currently gathering the facilitators and the hallway supporters to help run it and getting their training. And then we're hoping to get started in a few months so that any survivor in the Wake County area can come talk freely with us and others like them. And it's something very important and not out there. There are only a few in the country. Hope Group, who I believe is here, is one of them. And we're actually doing a lot based on, and it's important work, and I am excited to have it here in Raleigh.
It does reflect really well on NAMI and on this area. Colorado, California, I think are the two that you mentioned. Our Nancy Johns,
Yes.
A mental health advocate who we've had on the show here, is involved with the Colorado group. And it's exciting that you're joining a small but really important group that focuses on this, meaning an important, an important category of services that is kind of rare right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
I'm lucky enough to have Nancy work with this one too.
I like that. I like that. A lot of good comments in the chat box. Paulina Mendez, our awesome intern, had mentioned you're not alone when you shared about the sexual assault. And I want to thank you for your courage for that too. Coming from Gail Pruitt, our psychiatric nurse on Facebook, Rosalie, your support group sounds so helpful and needed. It is very important work. And a lot of comments from Christy Banks, Nancy Johns, other folks in the chat. See, now I'm going to get in trouble because I've mentioned a handful and not all. So someone, I'm forgive me for that. You just like the term suicide prevention. Talk about that.
I do. It's very controversial. I don't like suicide prevention. I like suicide awareness. For me, prevention has a different connotation, and it's one that I think stunts help. So first off, we need to start teaching it before we get to a crisis.
Right.
So bring up awareness and talk about it to youth before we get to a situation where it has to be stopped or it becomes a larger issue. If we can talk about it more freely and openly, it may never get there. So to me, I think that's a bigger thing. And the other one is something that I was raised with as anti-prevention language is once somebody makes that decision, that's their decision. You can't change that. Some they want to be talked to, some you can't. For my mom, when she attempted, she said the only thing she thought of was that she was doing the best thing. and that nobody was going to say anything to change her mind. She was not going to be prevented. She was doing what needed to be done. And I don't want people to die by suicide by any means, but I just think that prevention is the wrong way to look at it. And it just causes a lot more guilt when someone does die by suicide despite an intervention.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sure. Yeah, it strikes me listening to you and thinking of the way we approach mental health in general. If this were cancer, we wouldn't let people get to stage 4 and then say, rally around that person, or not, and focus on it then at that late stage. We wouldn't tolerate that approach with other illnesses.
No, we teach, like, women are taught to do like breast exams. Like, they're taught how to do that to themselves, told to do it monthly.
Mm-hmm.
But we are never taught about suicide awareness.
Right. And it's a high leading cause of death. It's second in many age groups.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially my age group.
Right. Exactly. Comment in the chat box, I thought the world would be better without me. I am so glad the world has you. And comment from Annie, woohoo, way to go, Rosalie. I support that. It's good to see y'all out there. All right, what gives you hope?
People are starting to talk about it. People talk about their mental health and their journeys, and maybe now that that is happening, suicide rates may get lower and treatment numbers are getting higher and discussions may get louder. The fact that every therapist has a wait list is sad. It sucks. But it shows that people are going. They are seeking help. And years ago, that was not the case.
Right. I've worked in the mental health area for 15 years now, 20 years, and there's always been a capacity issue. I would love to see some policies, some incentives, some long-term planning around that issue. Yeah. Especially for people of color. It's very difficult to find a culturally aware person who's in mental health who will know your experience and can identify so much. Yeah, there are just so many things that could improve, but at least we're talking, we're moving forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
All
Start
right.
somewhere.
I'm sorry?
Start somewhere.
That's right. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with that single step. All right, we are going to wrap up the interview portion of our show. Thanks everyone for hanging in there. We're going to take your questions in just a moment. Before we show our video of the week, I want to give a big shout out to our heroes working behind the scenes, Paulina Mendez, our intern on chat, and psychiatric nurse Gail Pruitt on Facebook. Of course, our deepest thanks to Rosalie for being our guest and sharing so candidly and bravely tonight. Video of the week. Today, I discovered something neat online. It's called Self-Care University. It's developed by the NAMI national team. And of course, I chose the one that focuses on animal therapy. Let's have a look at this.
Welcome to Self-Care University. I am Alessandra Torresani and I am a NAMI ambassador. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 21 years old, and I actually kept it quiet until just a few years ago when I got to meet other incredible people. 99.9% of them were part of the NAMI community, and I finally felt at home, like I found my people and that I wasn't judged and my life could be stigma-free and I could share my story. My emotional support is my best friend, which is my dog, Pee Wee Herman, and I have had him for 13 and a half years, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to survive my first panic attack. When I had my first panic attack, he was luckily with me in the trailer when I was shooting a TV show, and I didn't know what to do, but because he was there just to emotionally support me and love me and kiss me and just lick and make my face a total mess, it made it okay. And so what I started to do is volunteer my time and just surround myself around these angelic creatures as much as I possibly could. And whenever I'm having a really terrible day or even a great day, it doesn't matter. I just want to be around animals because there's no judgment with them. And they just want to bring love and support to you, and there's a connection and you have to be present. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do in the mental health world for yourself.
All right. Gotta love those animals, teaching us mindfulness and unconditional love, all kinds of wonderful stuff here. And there we go, there's Spidey. All right, excellent example there. Right, so we've got some questions. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you can ask a question by hitting the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen. Usually it's a little to the left. First one up from Gail. What advice would you give to psychiatric nurses when they are trying to help people such as yourself who are admitted to the hospital?
Ask. Just, that's my biggest thing, is ask them what they need. That can go such a long way, and I don't think it's ever asked.
All right. So just ask specifically, what can I do to help you?
Yeah, just say, like, what do you need? Instead of assuming or trying to make a standard, just say, what can I do to support you? What works? Because what works for me may not work for you.
Mm-hmm. People are all different. All right, question from Christy. And Christy, I have a question about your question. Would you be willing to start a virtual support group in the Nash, Edgecombe, Wilson County area? I'm not sure if you're referring to suicide survivors group or a general connection support group, Christy. But you could, okay. And the answer is both. And she clarified she's involved with her charity project, Building Bridges of Hope Ministry. They're involved with NAMI, working on becoming an affiliate in Nashville, Rocky Mount, Wilson, Tarboro, etc. Lots of African-American folks in that area. So not to put you on the spot, Rosalie.
I mean, I'm always willing to help. So if they needed help getting that started, I'd gladly help out.
Yeah, you can also go ahead and give the state office a call, Christy. We would love to help you get that up and running. And Rosalie has said that she's willing to be a resource for you as well. All right, thank you for your questions. She is the health and wellness minister at her church. Thank you, Christy. So we've got a brief lull in the questions. Please join us next week. I'll make some announcements while we're waiting for more to come in. Join us next week on Thursdays with NAMI. We've got an author, Tiffany Herring. She'll be discussing a book on de-escalation. How many times did I wish I had those skills to just handle any conversation that's getting too amped up. She is the president of NAMI in Pitt County, North Carolina, and she's the crisis intervention team coordinator with Trillium Health Resources. Of course, crisis intervention, or CIT, is the police training that helps officers and law enforcement personnel de-escalate situations where mental health is an issue. please fill out our survey. It helps us improve over time, lets us know what we did right and what we can improve on. Now we've got a couple of questions lined up. Is your support group for adolescents or adults?
It is for adults at the moment. However, eventually we could, in theory, create an adolescent one. If you needed an adolescent one, Hope Group does have that.
And the Hope Group, is that out of Colorado?
Yes, but they virtual.
And I'm sure Nancy Johns will help us out by putting something in the chat box on that, or Paulina or somebody will. What do you like most about being a social worker, from Paulina Mendez?
Versatility. I am trained to do so many things, and I can go anywhere. I can work with pretty much any population, and I can genuinely just follow my heart's desire. So if like having my passion right now be like helping with the suicide attempt survivor population, but my ultimate goal is completely different.
Mhm.
So I can do all of it and still have the same degree and just be helping people. That's all I've wanted.
Wow, that's a wonderful mission. We've got a hand raised from Michelle. Michelle, would you like to ask your question? You would just need to unmute, Michelle, if you'd like to ask your question. Go ahead. I see you're unmuted, Michelle, but we're not able to hear you. Maybe you could try typing into the Q&A. Or into the chat box, whatever you can do. I'm sorry we weren't able to hear you there. What else have we got going on? Brief lull on the questions coming in. Please fill out our survey if you'd like to submit a video of the week or appear on Thursdays with NAMI. We might be interested in having you as a guest. You can take the survey and give me your contact information there. That's a very easy way to do that. Is there anything you want to share? Anything I haven't asked, Rosalie?
Not at this moment. Mostly just, I know stigma is out there, but don't let it be. It is only out there as long as you let it be.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been familiar with NAMI?
I mean, I've heard about it since I was a teenager, but I didn't start looking, here he is, more into it until it came time for my internship, which was in December.
Okay. Because so many of your comments are about tearing down stigma, and you don't have to let yourself be controlled or confined by stigma. I grew up, of course, I live with depression, anxiety, got some trauma going on at different points. My family of origin was Irish Catholic, and we didn't talk about emotions, didn't talk about mental health. And I found NAMI as part of my professional life. I was doing marketing and development for a supportive housing agency, and at the same time, my own mental health had become a real issue. And I was just lucky enough to work in mental health and discover this peer movement, and there are safe spaces where you can not be afraid of that label, where you can talk about medication or talk about what you're going through. So I feel like there's so many families who aren't aware of NAMI, but where it would really make a difference.
Yeah, if I hadn't always been interested in social work, psychology, mental health as a career path, I definitely wouldn't have found it until late college.
Hmm. Yeah, but you had a lot of those communication tools and stigma busting tools for, you found them elsewhere within your family, which is wonderful. All right. Any other questions for Rosalie? We go until 8 or 8:30. It kind of depends on the flow of the show. We don't, it's not mandatory that we stay till 8:30. But I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thanks to our folks on Zoom and on Facebook. And Rosalie has just really impressed me as, you impressed me with your poise, and you talk about difficult topics in a way that gives everyone permission to say, okay, this is something that a lot of people go through and a lot of people survive, and it's okay. So I want to thank you for your courage and your candor. All right. Well, question from April. What took you into social work, and how do you deal with your mother?
I always had mental health as a part of my life. I didn't know any different, and it was a defining feature. So why not make it my career? It's what I knew, it's what I did best. So I decided I wanted to do some sort of therapy, and social work allowed me to be able to change my mind later and pivot from therapy to macro work. So if you don't know what macro work is, we're on the policy side of things, or support groups and stuff like that. And then with my mom, we are both medicated now. But yeah, things still happen. We both still have our days, but it's my mom, and that's just kind of how it is. There's definitely trauma, but we talk about it. And she is my best friend. She's childish, but she's fun, and she's always there.
Well, it gives me a warm feeling to hear you talk about your mother. My mom passed a number of years ago, but she and I just used to laugh and laugh and laugh. She could be very childlike too. So a lot of fond memories there. It feels to me like it's pretty much time to wrap up, but thank you again to all of our Zoom folks and to Rosalie especially. And if you're feeling alone out there, please reach out to us. We understand here at NAMI, and we will walk with you to a better place. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Good night.